Hi, I'm Chef Lynn. Welcome to the Flavor Secrets Kitchen. Today with me is Joan Donnet of Essence on Main in Clarkston.
Hello.
Today we're going to be making holiday appetizers. We'll start with a salmon tortilla stack that has all those things in it that taste good with salmon, like shallots and capers and cream cheese. We're also going to make a boursin. Did I say it right?
Boursin?
Boursin cheese
Yes.
from scratch, so you know everything that's in there and you can make it to your own taste. We're going to show you how to work with phyllo dough and make it painless. We're going to show you how to make a beautiful sugared grape centerpiece for a platter. We're going to make some little phyllo cups, and we're going to end up with some stuffed eggs. So let's get right to it.
All right.
So let's get started first with the salmon tortilla tart, or as I like to call it, the salmon stack. We're going to start with 5 or 6 little flour tortillas, and as you know, I've got my favorite tortillas here, the Mex America brand.
They are the best.
They are the best. I've got 6 here, and I'm going to build this with the little tortillas. These are only like 6-inch tortillas. You can use bigger ones if you want to, but then you need to have some kind of a cake ring or something to cut that with. Actually, most of the time I do it that way because then I have these really straight, beautiful sides. Now I'm just spreading on here some Philadelphia cream cheese spread. You can use the low-fat version for this, or you can use regular cream cheese too. Actually, I prefer regular cream cheese, reason being it's firmer, and then after you put this together, it'll stay together better. Okay, so I've got cream cheese on the bottom. Hang on there, it wants to slip all over the place. And I'm using an offset spatula. The handle is offset, just like you use for icing cakes because it's easier. And then I've got this beautiful smoked salmon here. I'm just going to try to arrange it nicely around the top of the tortilla and
How
get
do you
as
choose your
much
smoked
as I
salmon?
can. Well, I was going to ask you that in a minute.
Oh.
Actually, I just choose whatever smoked salmon they have.
Okay.
But why don't you tell me about salmon? Let me first just sprinkle this, top this a little bit with some chopped red pepper, and I chose red pepper. You can use any kind of pepper you want to, but because it's the holidays and we're doing holiday appetizers today, I chose everything I could that was red and green. So green again, here we've got a few little capers. If you don't like capers, you can just use a few. If you like a lot of capers, then put them in every layer. I usually just put them in one layer because I'm not that crazy about capers. I mean, I like a few, but not a lot. So that's how I would do it. But you can build yours any way you want to. And now I've got some fresh dill here.
Nice compliment to the salmon.
Taking it off of the stems here a little bit and just using the leaves. Just kind of put dill all over it there. And now what I want to do is take another tortilla and spread this on here. All over it. Get a nice coating. Oh, this kind of gets all over. Again, this is a little harder to spread if you use regular cream cheese, but it has an advantage that it'll get firmer in the end. And then I'm just going to turn it over like that so that I've got cream cheese on the top and cream cheese on the bottom. Now all I'm going to do is repeat that 4 more times so that I get a stack. Okay, so I just used 5 tortillas because I think that that stack is big enough for what I want to do. I want to just have a little appetizer that I can serve either individually or on a plate. So now what you need to do is just wrap this thing in saran wrap or any kind of plastic wrap you like and put it in the refrigerator. The really cool thing about this thing is you have to make it ahead because it takes some time to set. So you want to press it down like this. Sometimes when I put it in the refrigerator, I'll actually set a plate or something on it. And we'll just set this aside for the moment because I have one that's already been in the refrigerator that we can now cut. So let's just move these things out of the way a little bit. And we'll clean up here just a tad. And then I'll show you what I would do to plate it. One of the things that we really wanted to talk about today is how to make your food look professional. And the way you do that is really just the way you present it, the way you put it on the plate, and the way you, I like to say, decorate it. So the pretty plate is half the battle. So I've got a really nice spode Christmas dish here. And here's my tortilla stack that I actually made yesterday. So this is a great make-ahead dish. Make it the day before, put it in the refrigerator. And then before I cut these, I'll usually put it in the freezer for just about 20 minutes, just so that it's really cold. It's really cold here. And then I want to have a very sharp knife and just sort of go around the edges and make it clean and pretty. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut this into little wedges. Look at that. Isn't that pretty?
Beautiful. That
it's
is
really
beautiful.
a pretty appetizer. And then for each person, you just want to have a little wedge. And I love to serve it just on a little plate with a little fork and knife like this. And I'll just set it usually on its side, like that. You don't need that little piece. And then maybe garnish it with a little bit of dill on top. Actually, I like to sort of just let the dill kind of go all over the plate like that. And then just hand each person a little individual serving like that with a fork and a knife. Or you can serve it more like a tart. And to do that, where'd my cream cheese go?
The cream cheese.
Still need that.
The spirited away.
Spirited away. Okay, thanks.
The spirit
I'm going
of
to
the
just
season.
cover the top of this just a little bit, just to make it pretty, and to give the dill something to stick to. Oops, I caught the edge of that. Okay. Just to give the dill something to stick to. Now you can take that away.
All right, my dear, thank you.
And I'll take a little bit more dill and use this as a nice green garnish. Now, whenever you're garnishing, one thing to think about is what ingredients have you put in the dish, because those are the things that will taste good with it. So I've got dill in the middle of this, and I love dill much more than capers. I'm going to just make all these little wedges.
So are you thinking
and
in
put them
terms of
right over on the serving plate?
a 2-bite serving? Or I think most appetizers are kind of small like that.
Right.
But that's
I think it's more like a 3 or 4 bite serving.
that one does look
That's
a little.
why I really like to serve it with a dish and a fork and a knife, because as you know, appetizers should really be 1 bite. This reminds me of one time I was sitting in a restaurant in Paris. They handed me what looked like a 1-bite appetizer. It was a finger appetizer. And I, for some reason, bit into it, and it had exploding pea liquid center that came completely down my front. So anyway, that
You should have popped it in instead, I guess.
right, it was supposed to be a popper, I guess. I missed that part.
Something got lost in translation.
Right. So then, of course, the waiter was indignant that I had done that, when I was indignant that he had not told me. But anyway, sometimes your tortilla will separate a little bit like that. So each time you make you want to have a clean cut, have a clean knife. And there you go. I think you can see where this is going. I'll finish this up and garnish it, and we'll show you what we end up with later.
It's beautiful.
So now, another thing that you like to have on your party buffet is always a really nice cheese spread. So Chef Joan will now show you that.
Now we're going to be putting together a simple cheese spread, and this is actually a recipe for Boursin cheese, which you can actually buy in the store, but I prefer to make it fresh just because it's a lot easier than you'd expect. You could buy it and not really know what all the ingredients are, not be able to change up some of the flavors, but the way that we do it here, you can actually introduce other flavors into it besides the ones that I'll be working with today. So we start off with a room temperature block of cheese, or if you want to use what you had used earlier, the cheese spread in the container, 8 ounces is what you're looking for. We're going to be adding these flavors: dill, fresh chives, some garlic, mayonnaise, real mayonnaise, and some Dijon mustard. After all, it is a French recipe. You do need to have your Dijon mustard.
Expect that.
Yes. So basically, with the room temperature cheese, you just kind of work it around in the bowl a little bit. You're just going to be incorporating these flavors, so you just kind of want it to be smoothed out a little bit. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise. And I know it seems funny that you're adding a little bit of fat to a little bit of fat.
A little bit of fat, yeah. Well, that should make it taste really good.
It does. It actually rounds out some of the flavors. And I find that the teaspoon of Dijon kind of cuts some of that fattiness too. So it adds that nice little piquant.
Gives it a little bit of a bite in the back of your tongue.
Yes, it does. And like you had said, you can add whatever flavors you like. So we'll just kind of keep it basic with the Boursin here. I have actually seen some merchandised boursin with like roasted red pepper and things. And I'm thinking you've got shallots here and capers, roasted peppers. We can do all kinds of different things with it. But I digress. We're going to add.
I like the idea of some shallots in there.
Yes.
Onion is always good in anything.
Onion is good in anything. 1 tablespoon of chives.
Okay.
And just a half a teaspoon.
Fresh chives.
Fresh chives. Half a teaspoon of fresh dill. And I prefer fresh.
Fabulous.
You can definitely use dried, and if you are planning to use dried, you don't need as much.
So you have to mix this by hand, right? You don't want to put this in your food processor?
One of the things that I like about mixing by hand is it's part of the experience. I mean, you can definitely do things, in your
experience.
It's
right.
part of the experience. I went to culinary school to learn, the ways and the means of all kinds of beautiful cooking, and I don't mind mixing things. 1 clove of garlic, and I like to press mine because I just like to have it all nice and uniformly placed in there. And it is fresh garlic. You could use roasted garlic too. I think that would impart a sweeter flavor as well.
Yeah.
But just a little bit
Plus,
of that.
roasted garlic is a little bit easier for some people to digest, I find. In fact, if I am a person who has a little bit of trouble with garlic, but if it's roasted, I can handle it.
Handle it better. I agree.
Plus, I need it to keep the ghosts away.
Of vampires. And whatever manner of scary creatures. So,
hey, that looks great.
one of the other things about mixing it by hand,
smell.
you actually will be able to see a little bit of the greenery.
The herbs, that's true. And
Yeah.
if you put that in the food processor, they'll just get all crushed and turn green and get spoily looking. So
Yeah.
I do like the idea of the fresh herbs.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I'd even put more in there.
You definitely
For
could.
my taste.
Yes.
I'd put more dill.
And I love dill. I did end up having a little bit of extra. 'Tis the season after all.
There you go.
A little more green, nothing wrong with that. And as you had said, having red and green in terms of garnishing and adding to your appetizers really is, 'tis the season.
Yeah, actually, that's why we have this big tray over here. And this is all things that I went to the store and found to garnish. And I really concentrated on red and green for Christmas. And it's one way you can make your buffet look really beautiful and also smell really nice. I mean, you can just put a bunch of herbs right on the table in a little arrangement, or put them in your flower arrangement. I love to put herbs in the flower arrangement, especially mint, because it'll stay nice if its stems are in the water. It'll stay nice throughout your party, as opposed to just laying it on the table. Then it's going to be dried up in about 10 minutes. Don't ask me how I know that either, but I have tried that before. Things from the yard,
Yes.
to bring in.
Yes.
Just as an aside too, remember, if you bring things in from the yard, there is a state law that you can't put anything that's inedible on a plate. And I know when I go to buffets, lots of times I'm like picking off the poinsettia and different things away from the food, because people don't realize that things you can find in your garage, things you can find in your yard are not always edible. So you don't want to put them on your plates, even though they're pretty.
That's true. And one of the things we did learn in culinary school was the dysfunctional garnish. And you don't want a dysfunctional garnish just simply means something, like you said, that's inedible. You don't want to put that twig. It might be pretty, but if you can't eat it, there's no reason for it being on the plate.
Being on the plate, right. But I think that's changing a little bit, because I'm seeing a lot more plate decoration that isn't something you would eat. I mean, it's edible, but it's not something you would pick up and eat, like a piece of raw purple cauliflower or things like that. That's starting to come back, that old all the food carving and things like that.
Oh, the food carving. That's artwork. That's absolutely beautiful work. But yeah, I'm just, I've seen, twigs and things and thinking, yeah.
Right. No twigs. Yeah, no twigs.
All right. All you need to do with this cheese is to put it in a nice little container. And as Lynn had prepared the earlier recipe, that one can be made in advance. This one definitely can be made in advance too. You can make it and put it in your container, put it in the refrigerator, and it's good for at least up to a week.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes.
So something you can make ahead. You can make the salmon tart the night before, the salmon stack or salmon tart, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
You can make this up to a week ahead.
Yes.
So you can stagger your production so that you can really relax and enjoy your party.
You can. And of course,
what are we garnishing with
we're
here?
just garnishing with a little bit of red and green, and I just like the look of, anything a little bit festive.
Yeah,
now, of course,
that's pretty.
It's kind of in the way when people start to spread, but that first person is lucky enough to get a little bit of extra something.
Okay. The prize.
The prize.
For getting people to come to the table, right?
Yes, yes. And you just want an assortment of crackers, and here I have just a wide assortment of different kinds of crackers. You can use baguette bread. You can use just about anything in a nice
I like
little
the idea
serving
of
spread.
toasted baguette bread or toast points or something like that too would be really great.
Yes.
All right, well, let's get into the serious stuff now and haul out the
right.
phyllo dough.
All right. Now we're going to be working with phyllo dough, and it's
Okay.
one of my all-time favorite go-to doughs to use in the kitchen. And this time of year, you can make just about any appetizer with it. We can make
Most
them in-
people would not say that.
Oh,
I think
that's
most
true.
people are really intimidated by working with phyllo dough, and that's one reason we really wanted to show you how to do it today.
Yes, we've become accustomed to working with it. And you basically buy phyllo in the freezer section. You don't want to hand make it. It's a very arduous process. So we buy it frozen, and it comes in 2 little rolls like this. You'll roll it out right onto the plastic, and all Lynn and I did was kind of cut down a small segment of the strips here, the lengthwise.
So you want to kind of think about cutting it into thirds. So you have 3 cuts,
3 available
right?
cuts. Yes.
Now, I've just discovered that we do this totally differently. I wouldn't do that at all. Go ahead and start rolling up
Okay,
here, though.
okay.
And
What
notice
I
that
do-
she's got it covered.
It's covered with
right.
plastic, and I have a damp cloth. You want to make sure that you don't get the damp cloth onto the dough because the dough is
Right.
very, very thin and it will just stick together. But I do just leave my phyllo here in a strip, and I kind of slide over the extra portion there, making sure that I keep it nice and covered so it doesn't dry out. It's very, very thin, paper thin, and I think that's what intimidates people. Is
Right. It'll dry out in just a couple of minutes if you're not careful.
It does
But that's
dry
a really
out.
good idea to put the plastic on there. Really good idea.
Yes, so I do the plastic and a little bit of the wet towel.
Okay,
And
so
then
in here we've got melted ghee.
melted ghee, which is just
Where's
purified.
that jar? Yep. Clarified butter, basically, is ghee. You can buy it in a jar. You can make it yourself. Just melt the butter and skim off the white.
Right.
Okay.
We also have a
There's the ghee.
mix of cheeses that Lynn had, and we mixed an egg in with probably about a 12-ounce bag of cheese.
Right? 2 eggs. Actually, that was 2 small eggs.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 large egg or 2 small eggs.
Okay.
With the 12-ounce bag of cheese.
All right.
Just grated cheese. That's all it is.
Just nice and easy. We put it right in the corner here, and all we're doing is pulling up the first 2 layers of dough that are laying on this stack. And we're doing a flag fold. So you just work your way, triangle after triangle, toward the top, fold over that little portion there, put it on the tray, and you'll brush that again with the ghee. So it's something that you can easily.
Why don't you go ahead and show that, how you would brush that in the end.
Just give it a quick little swabbing of.
Just on the top and not on the bottom?
Well, you can do both actually, but with the butter that's actually on the dough itself, it will kind of work its way through. It'll be really crispy and delicious, but you can do whatever you would like in terms of
Yeah, I usually brush
finishing
the
it
whole
off.
thing with butter, and you can use the butter to seal it. Now, I think people worry about this dough because it gets a little bit, it's a little bit gentle. So what happens if you accidentally rip it? What do you do?
Well, if you accidentally or on purpose rip it, it's really very forgiving. And that's the nice thing about it, and I think that's what intimidates most people. We just kind of move it along there. You'll find as you're working, if you don't work quickly enough, which we've learned by experience,
Sometimes it happens.
you will end up having the dough crack. If it's cracked there, as you're folding up, you're still able to incorporate it into the rest of the
Right, see
rolling
how the
there.
butter just kind of held it all together?
Just kinda holds it all
And then you
together.
can seal that in, too, with butter and just cover the whole thing
Do
with
it the way that Lynn does,
the butter.
because
No,
butter is good.
butter is good.
Butter is
Right.
good.
How about if I put that in the oven?
You can do that, and I didn't make
We've
it look
got a-
artistically beautiful on the tray there, but
That's all right.
they'll bake up.
Okay, and you show them the cups.
I will show them the cups. One of the other things that you can do with phyllo is actually make them into cups. And you could actually purchase them that way as well, but like Lynn and I had said, you just kind of cut your dough into thirds here. Let me just pull that back so you actually have the thirds. And I'm trying not to harm Lynn's knife at all. A chef loves their knives, so you have to make sure that you're always treating them with great respect. And if you've damaged them in any way, buy them a new knife.
Has this happened to you before?
Well, I'm just putting that out there.
Okay. Now, do we need to butter these little?
Actually, you can, I have just like, this makes a perfect little appetizer.
Okay.
Go right
This
ahead.
is like a little baby muffin tin and butter?
It's like a baby
each one?
muffin tin. Go ahead and butter each one.
Okay.
Once you've cut your strip here, you're actually going to cut again into squares. And again, we're using the ghee.
Okay.
It's got a nice high smoke point. You'll take your little leaves of dough, cover up the other guys while you're working with this one set. And let me move these out of the way so you kind of
So you've got what, like a 3-inch square there?
Yeah,
maybe
just a little
3-inch
guy.
Square?
I tuck it in there, and all you're doing is brushing and tucking, and I actually do
Brush and tuck.
Brush and tuck.
Brush and tuck. Ah, more than one.
Actually, I do several, and you can do
Okay.
this a variety of different ways.
And then what do you put in the middle?
When I'm baking them like this, I actually, I have baked them just like blind baking, just baking them off like that, and then you can fill them at any point with crab salad, salmon salad, chicken salad.
Anything you like.
anything
Make ahead,
you'd
make
like.
ahead, make ahead.
Yes,
So another thing you can do weeks ahead, right?
definitely.
Okay, and have those all ready and then just make your salad the night before.
Right, and
So the day of your party, you're just really putting things together.
yes.
That's my goal, is to have everything prepared,
Well, we always worry about
and then
the
I'm
house.
just presenting.
Right. So if you can get your food portion done in advance, you can go ahead and worry about the house all you want.
So this is, or we can have someone else worry about the house, hopefully.
Definitely.
Yeah.
This is another way to do it. You just
Oh,
go
I like
ahead
that
and
way.
do the 3, stack them kind of on an angle so you've got the little
Kind of
points.
like a little star.
Yeah, and go ahead and tuck that in as well.
And
So
how long do we bake these?
Those actually only take anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes.
5 to
So
7 minutes at 375
Yes.
in a preheated oven.
Definitely
So whenever you
preheated.
get a recipe, the oven is always preheated.
Yes.
All right, we have one more thing to show you, which is pretty cool. We're going to talk about some eggs next. So before we begin this last segment, I just wanted to mention that this is what the box looks like that you find a phyllo dough in.
Yes.
So it's spelled F-I-L-O, and this Athens brand is a really common one
It's a common brand.
that you can find pretty much anywhere. So again, look for it in the freezer section. It's usually kind of like by the Cool Whip
It is.
sort of thing. Okay, now I wanted to show you something that I like to do with deviled eggs, or I like to call them stuffed eggs because I don't actually devil them in the old sense of the word. Eggs are really coming back in. I mean, you see them at every holiday party. You see them all the time now, and they're really nice, a really nice hors d'oeuvre. The only problem with them is that you have to make them at the last minute because your mix can dry out. So this is more the traditional mix made with egg, and I put a little bit of onion in there. I put a little bit of red pepper in here because we're talking about holiday hors d'oeuvres and we're trying to use red and green as much as possible. You can also use a pastry bag if you want to fill these to make them nice and easy to fill. But what I wanted to point out is you don't have to just use the traditional yolk mixture for eggs. And I'm finding that people really like to have the egg white boiled, but they like something else in it that doesn't have the cholesterol of the yolk. So what I've got here is some imitation crab for people who can't do crab, imitation crab, and it's mixed with salt and pepper, and then just a little bit of horseradish cream. And also you can mix up your plate like this, make every other one different, and so it makes a really festive, pretty plate. And then over here I've got my best tuna fish recipe. And so it's tuna fish. My husband loves this one. He'll be down here in a minute to scarf these up. Tuna fish, I put a little bit of leek in there, a little bit of celery, again the red pepper, and salt and pepper. Did I say salt and pepper? Can't remember.
Mentioned it in one of them, but I think
And then I mixed a little bit of mayonnaise in there, just like I did with the yolk mixture. And this yolk mixture, I love to load it up with vegetables. So this has really tiny chopped carrot, celery, a little bit of onion for a little bit of bite.
Good.
And so the idea is just, you'll see how we decorate this in a minute, just to make a really pretty festive plate of eggs.
Colors and
Stuffed
textures.
eggs, as I
Yes.
like to call them.
Stuffed
All right,
eggs.
and then for the center of our platter,
This is something that I do at the holidays, and all I have with me is honey, and of course I use Michigan honey because the closer to home you get your honey, the better it is for you.
really, now talk about that for a second.
Well,
Why is that?
actually, the bees are typically getting their food sources off of native plants and those that are around your home and
or the ones you're used to.
the ones that you're used to. And if you happen to have an allergy
Awesome.
to certain types of plants and pollens, while those bees goes out,
Where those bees goes?
While
Where goes those bees?
While they go out into the fields and eat or gather off of the plants that you might be allergic to, some of that pollen ends up in their honey, in their final product. So if you are actually consuming the product that the bees are working on, and it's something that you're allergic to, you can help offset some of your allergies by kind of building an immunity to them.
And that's just the bee's knees.
It's just the bee's knees. And as you can see, I just have a pastry brush, and I'm dipping it into the honey, and I'm lightly coating these grapes with the honey, because you can do this a number of ways. With egg whites or with honey. I prefer honey because you want to eat these grapes. I've got a little bit of sugar here. It's kind of sparkly and crystally. This is actually an organic sugar, so it has a little bit more of an off white hue to it, a little more of a tan color. And
but you could use any kind of sugar for that, right?
You could use any kind of sugar. There's
raw
actually,
sugar?
Yes. There's some that's called sanding sugar, which is made in specifically for decorating along these lines. So you can see they kind of give the grapes a little bit of a frosty look without having to have the frozen grapes on the platter.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Also, honey, if you put this with like a cheese platter, honey goes very well with cheeses. I'm also going to brush a little bit of my rosemary with the honey as well. And we had talked about how, there are garnishes now that are just for decoration, and this is one of them. So you got a little icy.
Uh-oh. Dysfunctional garnish.
I know.
I'm going to
chew on this. No.
No, that is really pretty, actually.
It is pretty.
I really like it, especially for the holidays because it looks frosty like it's been outside. Another thing I wanted to show you is what I have here is just egg yolk, okay, that's been cooked. The middle of the egg that I didn't use for these, what did I call them? Stuffed eggs. Stuffed eggs. And all I'm doing is pushing this right through a sieve. And see what I get? I get the prettiest. I didn't mean to do that. Don't do it over your plate or you'll drop it right into it. But anyway, it's the prettiest, featheriest
It looks
stuff.
like little chicken feathers.
Yeah, isn't it pretty?
It is very
And you
pretty.
can use that as a garnish on things like that. So obviously I'm going to clean this plate up before I serve it to anyone, but it makes a very pretty little garnish, and I especially love it on contrasting colors. Like if you're making asparagus, this makes a great garnish. The only thing you have to remember is once you put it on, you can't move it.
Right.
So you have to put it on whatever it is you want you're putting it on.
And keep it on.
And keep it on, okay? Then you're done. All right, let's take a look at all the things we've made today. So here are all of our dishes that we made today. We've actually got kind of a nice little lunch buffet here for, I wonder who's standing around here.
I don't know.
First we did the salmon tortilla tart, or the salmon stack as I like to call it, and we garnished it with dill. Then you did the
Boursin cheese.
Boursin cheese spread, and we
Yes.
paired that with some crackers and again put a little red and green garnish on it. Then we made the phyllo dough triangles and we just filled them with cheese, although you can fill them with lots of other things. The honey sugared grapes, and I just tried one of these. They're delicious. I caution you for using that as a centerpiece because it's likely to get eaten if I'm there at your party.
Sticks left.
And here are the little phyllo cups, and we just took some of the same tuna salad that we put in the eggs and put it in the middle of the cups, and that's a really nice, healthy little appetizer. And then lastly, we made the stuffed eggs, and you can see what a difference it makes if you use a little salad inside instead of just the plain old yellow yolk mix.
Beautiful.
One thing I wanted to mention to you though is if you have trouble peeling your eggs, it's probably because they're too fresh. If the fresher they are, the harder they are to peel. So that's our last tip of the day.
There you go.
Thanks a lot for coming by, and thanks Chef Joan for joining me today.
Thank you, Lynn. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. I'm Chef Lynn. Enjoy.